quicker in our rotations, which I think we'll have to be better at the next game.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel like any of the officiating rule changes are impacting how you're able to play as a team defensively?
Officiating wasn't our problem tonight.
Caitlin, you obviously had 5 fouls in that your second
Yeah.
half. Just how does that affect?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard when you foul, and, I just need to do a better job of being straight up, keep the defender in front of me, and also, like, if they're going to hunt ISOs, just move my feet a little bit better, and, yeah, definitely some tough ones, but that's just basketball. It's just a game. Learn from it, watch the film, and come back next game and be ready to go.
37 points from Portland in the third quarter. Just what broke down for you guys defensively there?
Nothing. I think they did a great job just hunting the sprays. They got a few open threes. I think that's pretty much it. It was just some of those rotations.
Yeah, rotations were a little bit slow.
Yeah.
And everything in every coverage that we really tried, and when we switched, they did a great job exploiting it. They played with great energy. So you got to give Portland credit. I thought they were really good. They were aggressive. Obviously, they shot the ball well, almost 40% from three, 50% from the field. It's a recipe for success, and we just have to be a little bit more disruptive in everything that we're doing.
Caitlin Clark walked into that Portland game with something to prove. 4 wins, 4 losses, not exactly the start anyone expected from a team built around the most exciting player in women's basketball. And for the first 6 minutes, she looked like herself. Explosive, decisive, in control. Indiana jumped out to an 8-2 lead, and Clark had her fingerprints on every single basket, either scoring or setting teammates up with that laser-sharp court vision that made her a household name before she ever played a professional minute. Then Stephanie White made a substitution. Clark came off the floor. Boston came off the floor. Hull came off the floor. 3 of Indiana's best players gone at the same time in a moment when the Fever actually had momentum. And Portland didn't just respond. They went on a 13-2 run. They took a double-digit lead. And here's the thing, they never gave it back. Not once. The final score was 100-84, and honestly, that scoreline was doing Indiana a favor. But the score wasn't even the most important story coming out of that game. Caitlin Clark finished with 6 points. 6. In 21 minutes. She went 1 for 7 from the field, picked up 5 fouls, and spent more time on the bench than on the court. For a player who averaged over 19 points per game in college and came into this league with generational expectations, that stat line reads less like a bad shooting night and more like a complete malfunction. The foul trouble was real, nobody's saying it wasn't. But the way the entire night unraveled around her felt like something bigger than just a few bad calls from the referees. And then it happened. During a timeout, with cameras rolling, with millions of people watching, Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White got into it. Now, nobody outside that huddle heard exactly what was said, but anyone watching could read the body language. Clark was heated. White was firm. And within moments of that exchange, White made her decision. Clark was coming out of the game, replaced by rookie Raven Johnson. Let that land for a second. Your franchise player, the woman this entire organization was rebuilt around, the player whose jersey sales are through the roof, whose games consistently draw some of the highest ratings in WNBA history, pulled from the game after a visible sideline disagreement. That is not a quiet, behind-closed-doors moment. That played out on national television, and the basketball world noticed immediately. Social media went sideways. Clips of the exchange spread within minutes. Takes started flooding in from every direction. Fans defending Clark, fans defending White, analysts questioning the rotation, former players jumping in with perspective. This wasn't just sports commentary. This felt personal to people. Because Caitlin Clark isn't just a basketball player to a massive portion of her fan base. She's a symbol, a movement, a reason millions of people who never watched the WNBA before now watch it every single week. So when she's struggling, people feel it. And when she's visibly frustrated with her coaching staff on national television, people really feel it. Sue Bird was one of the first major voices to weigh in, and she did what Sue Bird always does, brought calm, reasoned perspective to a moment that was threatening to spiral. Bird's take was direct. She said it's frustration. She said it's not that crazy. She reminded everyone that this kind of sideline emotion isn't some unprecedented crisis. It happens in basketball. It's happened throughout history between great players and great coaches. And she pointed to something important, that these moments can actually be a sign of a healthy, competitive player-coach relationship, not evidence that everything is falling apart. Bird has been there. Multiple championships, pressure-packed moments, emotional timeout conversations. She knows what it looks like when two people who both desperately want to win end up clashing in the heat of competition. And her message was essentially, slow down, this isn't the disaster you think it is. Cheryl Miller came in with a slightly different angle. Miller, someone who knows a thing or two about fiery competitiveness given her own legendary playing career, acknowledged the frustration but focused on the visibility of it. Her point was nuanced. This kind of tension between a player and a coach, between two people who share an obsessive drive to win, is normal. It happens everywhere, at every level of basketball. The problem isn't that it happened. The problem is that it happened in public, in front of the cameras, during a nationally televised game. Because once it's visible, it becomes a story. And once it becomes a story, it takes on a life of its own. Miller framed White's decision to bench Clark immediately after the exchange as essentially a coaching statement, a message that regardless of who you are, regardless of your star power, there's a standard of conduct that has to be maintained on the sideline. Whether you agree with that decision or not depends entirely on how you view the situation. Some people see it as White asserting necessary authority. Others see it as the worst possible time to make that kind of statement, in the middle of a close game, at the expense of your best player's court time. Here's what nobody can argue with, though. Indiana is 4-4. That's a .500 record. For a franchise and a player carrying this much expectation, this much investment, this much cultural weight, that record demands a conversation. Clark is clearly talented enough to carry this team. The Fever clearly have pieces around her. But something isn't clicking at a consistent level, and the minute distribution question, specifically how White manages Clark's time on the floor, keeps coming back up game after game. The early substitution that allowed Portland's 13-2 run didn't happen in isolation. It fits a pattern that Fever fans and analysts have been tracking all season. There's a feeling among a growing number of observers that Clark is being managed in ways that disrupt her rhythm, pull her out of moments when she's clearly affecting the game positively, and leave Indiana vulnerable in stretches that end up deciding games. White, for her part, is trying to do what coaches do, balance the roster, develop depth, manage minutes over the course of a long season. Those are legitimate coaching concerns. But when your franchise player is finishing games with 6 points and 5 fouls, when she's visibly frustrated on the sideline, when your team just got blown out by 16 points, those concerns start to feel secondary to a much more immediate problem. The relationship between Clark and White is going to be one of the defining storylines of this WNBA season. How they navigate this public moment, how they communicate behind closed doors, how White structures the rotation going forward, all of it matters. Because the Fever are right at the point in their season where they can either build something real or watch the wheels start to come off completely. Clark isn't going anywhere. Her talent isn't going anywhere. But talent without trust, without the right structure around it, without a coaching dynamic that maximizes what she brings to the floor, that combination has buried promising teams before. Indiana cannot afford to let that happen. Not this season. Not with this player. Not with this much riding on getting it right. The question isn't whether Caitlin Clark is good enough. Everyone already knows the answer to that. The question is whether the people around her are putting her in the best possible position to show it.